Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today, Masechtas Sanhedrin Daf Samach. We are going to begin on Samach Amud Aleph, the fourth line from the top. So we've been learning when it comes to the laws of the Bnei Noach, the Shiva Mitzvah Bnei Noach, what is included. So Rabbi Elazar holds they're also obligated in Kilayim. So Minahadimili, so Shmuel the Berkot says, as Chukaisa Tishmaru, that they adhere to my chukim. And this Rashi says, Kishihisar Yisrael B'Sinai, when it was mentioned to Klal Yisrael as hara, Behem Techalo Sarbiya, that a person is not allowed to breed mixed breed animals. So as Chukaisa Shchachtakti Kvar B'nei Noach, the mitzvah that was already given to the Bnei Noach Tishmeru, you should keep Be'ilhin Behem Techalo Sarbiya Kilayim Abel his hard team. When it comes to plowing an ox with an ox and a donkey together, that they weren't warned. That's not one of the Sheva Mitzvahs. Okay. And it says that you're not allowed to mix your different species of animals. So sadchalo tizr kalayim, you're feeling not supposed to plant kalayim. So ma behemdacha baharva, it only means mixing the animals together to create a new species. Avsadcha baharkava, the whole issue is dafka by mixing, not just mixing seeds together, but rather grafting. So ma behemdacha ben baritz ben b'chutzaretz avsocha ben baritz ben b'chutzaretz. This applies everywhere. El miyat, if that's the case, ushmartim es chukais ves mishpotai chukim shechachti l'chakfar. But the pasuk says Rashi b'chol Torah kula hachanami nitzabnei noach alehem. Well, what do you mean? That pasuk can also be utilized to teach kol Torah kula. No hasam ushmartim es chukais dehashta. Over there, it says Ushmartim Schukoi sign from now. However, when it comes to Kalayim, as Chukai Tishmru, Chukim Timikara Tishmru, says Rashi, Yavagab the Gabi Shvias Vyoivil Ksiv Nami Es Mishpat Tasu is Chukosai Tishmaru. Okay. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karch Chus, Rabbi Acha bar Yaakov Eno Chayev Ad Shiavaydich Shem ben Oiber Oisyais. You're only Chayev when you say Hashem's name, when you blaspheme using Hashem's four-letter name. Lafuki ben shtei oisyos. Below. Coming to exclude Hashem's name, which is two letters, like an aleph and a lama together. So pshita yaki yoisias yoisi tanan. We use the language of yoisi, which is a four-letter word. So madatema mil sabi almahu denaka kamash malan. Maybe we just chose that word, but it doesn't mean that it's because it's four letters. Comes to teach us the name of Hashem, which is four letters, that also is considered to be a shame, and you don't need the Shem HaMefarish of 42 letters. Pshita Yaka Yoisis Yoisi Tanan. Obviously, it says Yois, which is four letters. So Mahadatema Diika Shem Rabba Umilsibi Almuhudanaka. Again, maybe you think you need the Shema Meforish. Nigmar Din Chulu. So what do you do when it comes to the Gemar Din regarding the person who blasphemes, and you're supposed to repeat, the witnesses are supposed to say what this person did, but by repeating it, it seems like you're blaspheming Hashem's name, and you're saying Hashem's name improperly. So Oyim Din, no. First of all, how do we know that a Gemar Din is supposed to be standing? So Rav Yitzchak Barami, the Amakar Pasuk says the Ehud ba'olav, that Ehud came to him, v'hu Yoshem be'aliyas hamikra, and he was sitting in the upper bathroom. Asher lo levada, who's by himself. Yomer Ehud, and Ehud said, Davar dibra kimli alecha, that the matter of Hashem is unto you. V'yakim yalkisei. Once he heard Hashem's name, so that caused Ehud to get up from his throne. We know that Eglon, he was a Nachri. He didn't really know all of Hashem's names. He only knew the Kinuyim, the secondary names. Amad, he still stood, he showed respect. So Yisrael, when a person has said a yid in Shem of Farish, then obviously you're supposed to stand. So it's interesting, we went out the chashivas of standing upon Hashem's name from Eglon, who ended up being killed. Okay. Kairim Minolan. So how do we know you're supposed to rend your garments upon hearing Hashem's name like that? T'chsiv v'yaba Likim ben Chilkiyahu v'shavna haSeifer, Shavna who was a scribe, v'yoyach ben Asav hamaskir as Chizkiyahu karui begodim. They rended their garments. V'yagidu as divrei Ravashka, and they said over the words of Ravashka. Ravashka is the person who actually cursed Hashem. Okay, so let's look at question 10. So from Eglon we learned that you need to stand be'ez haskaras Hashem, and the din we learned from Maisa the Gadif the Vashka or the, what does it say? The Gadif Ravashka. Ravashka, is very similar to the word Rivka, with a shin in the middle, right? So Ravashka. So he was Megadif. So how do we learn out? What do we learn from there? That Mamas Ravashka Nilmad de Hashamei Berachas Hashem Boy Kriya. You hear Hashem's name, you're supposed to rend your garment. Okay, so that's what we derive upon hearing that. Okay. All right. Weiter. Lom achin. So when you rend the garment, you can't sew it back up. So Manon, so Ravavoy Yasi Kriya. When Exer Shavak Siv Hacha Kriya Begadim Siv Hasam the Elisha the seer who Mitzak Avi Abba Rochav Yisrael. He was had the chariot of Yisrael. Who Farashav, and he had like his horses and chariots. V'Rahu Oid. You didn't see anymore. V'chazik b'v'gadav, and he grabbed his garment. Yikreim l'shnayim, and he ripped it into two. Now kiroyim, the fact that it says it's ripped, mimashma shenemar v'yikarim l'shnayim, and yodeh shehem karuyin u'matamudam karuyin. So basically it says, if it says it was ripped, so obviously if it's being ripped into two parts. When you hold on to something, you rip it into two. So what's the chiddush? The fact that it says it was ripped to two. The fact that it's l'shnayim, the chiddush is the matam of the karoyim. If it says it was in two, obviously it was ripped. So malamed shehin karoyim l'oilim means that it remained torn because you cannot re-sew it. Tanaban echad hashameya v'echad shameya mepi shamua chayim l'karoa. Not only the one who heard Hashem's name by the person being doing the blaspheming, but also the person who heard from the hearer also needs to rend their garment. The Eidim who don't have to rend their garments now because they already rend their garments before B'shas Maisa when Hashem's name was actually said by the Megadif. So v'chi kara b'shas shamu ma'havi. Haka shami hashta. Understand? Just because they ripped their garment before, they're hearing it again. So it looks like that. The he kishmo hamel Chizkiyahu. It says when he heard about this, as Dimar Ravashka, again he cursed Hashem. V'yikras begadav hamel Chizkiyahu. So he ripped. So Chizkiyahu kara v'heimu karu, but they didn't rip. Why only Chizkiyahu? Because this was the first time upon hearing it. However, the Eidim, everyone else, they don't need to rip their garments because they did already. So that's the raya. A person who hears an askar from an akum, there you don't have to, because it's so commonplace that they use Hashem's name like this in such a free way that otherwise you'll never have a garment that's not ripped. Ravashka. So how do we understand him? Where l'chayra he was an akum, and nonetheless we did render garments. Yisrael mumar hoya. Actually, Ravashka Taka was a yid Bez Yisrael Mummer. V'yom Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel ein kadim ela al Shem HaMiyuchad Bavad. We're all going to rip upon hearing the Shem HaMiyuchad. Lafuki kinoi, any other name of Hashem, Deloi. The truth is a plea to Rav Chia, B'Tirvayu. Actually, Rav Chia argues with both elements about the Shem Yuchad and about and not on a kinoi. If you hear Hashem's name nowadays, you don't need to rip. You don't say this. Since it's so common to curse Hashem now, unfortunately, so you would end up having a wardrobe filled with ripped garments. So that we're not going to do. It's like it's something which the Sibur is in Yochelamed boy. So Maman. So how do we understand this? Yisrael, if you're hanging out with all the Yidden, the Yidden aren't cursing Hashem. So El Pshita, what is the whole point? It's Miyav Kachavim. It must be because you keep hearing it from the Kachavim, who this is common to curse Hashem. Now, Yim Shem HaMiyuchid Migamiri, understand, the Shem HaMiyuchid is not something which they should really be familiar with. Elul Bikinui. They must use other names. So what do we see? Shmamina, Bismana Zehu Doloi. And nowadays, there's no Chiev, Kriya, by an Oivi Kachavim when it comes to a Kinoi. Ha Mikar Chayev, Shmamina. But before, Taka is that you would be Chayev. Okay. Hasheni Oimer Af Ani Kamayu. So the second one says, oh yeah, it's the same thing. I heard it. So Omer Shlokish, Shemamina Afani Kamohu Kosher Dini Mominus. By saying that statement, that's enough to be kosher for Dini Mominus, for monetary cases. However, Dini Nefashis, Umalahu the Avid Rabban. When it comes to Dini Nefashis, we do a mala, we go above and beyond. It says Rashi, but Dini Mominus of Dini Nefashis Shitzrichu Kol Edom Afarish Edusan. So actually, it's by Dini, not just by Dini Nefashis, but also by Dini Mominus, we also require them to explain. But since it's not possible, because we can't just have people speaking Hashem's name like this, and therefore they said, the second person doesn't have to, but it doesn't mean by all other matters, all you can say is Afani Kamahu. You actually have to explain. Because if you think Taki is puzzle, so what are we going to do? So we're going to end up potentially killing this person, says Rashi. Okay. So Vashlishi Aimer Afani Kamo. So you have two, and then you have a third guy. You usually only need two witnesses. So the third guy also has to speak up. So Stamek Rabbi Kiva to Makash Gimel Shnaim, says Rashi. So this is brought down in the beginning of Masechtas Makos. They makes a hekesh because it says Al Pi Shnaim Edim O Shloisha Edim Yumos Hameis. So what does that have to say? Obviously, if you can kill someone with two witnesses, then why does it mention three? So Rashi brings down this Gemara in Makos, the Makash Shloisha Shnaim, the Imnim Shlishi Karva Apostle, the third person is a Karva Apostle, Edishal Kuan Batal, and then they're all Batal. Hilkach Badkinan Le Bahedayu, we examined together with him. The mitzvah or mischachesh, if he becomes the Edom Zaymim or contradictory, Mavatalness of the Saihu, then it's Mavatal all the testimony. Because according to Rabbi Kiva, he says the third person is no different than the second. Okay, let's continue now on Samach Amud Beis with the next Mishnah. Well, actually, let's see some questions before we do that. TA9. Oshemei berachas Hashem mepi akum im chayv l'karoa madua in raya miravashka. So this we just had on Daf Samach. So as we just, this is TA9. So he says it's actually a machlokas and Ravashka. Some say it was actually a Yisrael mummer. So therefore it is not a raya. Okay. So that's TA9. So let's just mark this down. This is Amir ben Mishmul Hashaymei Azkar Mepia Avikachavim Eno Chai V'Korvim Tem Ravashka Yisrael Mumrahoya. So again, it's really machlokas, but he was a Yisrael, so that's not a raya. Question TB10. Yaka Yosi es Yosi. Madua Naka Tatana Shem Ze Davka. Why did they use the name Yosi? What is that coming to teach? So this is TB10. And what I wrote. Yosi who shall arba oisios b'shem. Who chayev im oimer es Hashem shall dald oisios. And nachnu l'roitzel oimer es Hashem rak pamachas b'shas edus l'beis. Okay, I'm not sure if we need to say that, but this is what the Gemara says. Eno chayev ad sheyavarech shem ben arba oisios. Lafuki ben shtei oisios delo. And also, you would maybe think that Ika de Amri, that you would think Taka that Adika Shem Rabba. You maybe would think that Kamash Malan, that's not required. Even a Shem ben Arba Oisios is enough that you would be Chayev as well. Not just a Shem Meforish. Okay, with that said, then we can now get to the next Amud, Samach Amud Beis. Okay. Says the next Mishnah. Says the Masnisin. Ha'oived avodas kachava. Person who engages in avodas zara. Echad ha'oived ve'echad hamizbach. So not only if a person serves that idol, but also if you sacrifice to it, ve'echad makater, you bring spices, ve'echad manasech, you bring libations, ve'echad mishtachava, you bow to it, ve'echad hamikabel of ve'loha. You accept it as your God. The lo eli ata. If you say, this is my God. Aval hamigafef, a menashek, person who hugs and kisses it, or a mechabed, who cleans it, or marvitz, like you sweep around it, marchatz, and you bathe it, vasach, you anoint it, vamalbish, vamanil, you put shoes on it, or you dress it, over beloy sase. So that you're not going to be chayv misa for. Okay, so let's look at Rashi. So, Gemara moikim la l'kul masnisin b'shein darka shel oisa avodas kachavim la'avoda v'kach. All these other cases is where it's not the normal avoda. V'yafil hachi ahanach avodas mechayev, you can still be chayev. So, if a person worships an idol, you're chayev. But even these other things like mezavech, mekater, nasech, you're still going to be chayiv, even though that's not the normal way to worship this thing. And then it says in Rashi, "Mikabel of beloha v'yafil amir ba'almo," which is a tremendous thing. Even if all you did was speak, then itself is enough to be chayiv. Loshen acher b'mikabel eloha shelo b'fanav v'omerlo eliyat b'fanav. Okay. Tana seifa b'fanav mechal dereish shelo b'fanav chayiv. Okay. However, when it comes to, let's say, hugging it or kissing it, you're over a loisa say. Says Rashi, the lois savdim. You say riksiv, that's extra pasuk. Kad b'devaras rishaynais v'achroinais. V'chad lo yishtachav alheihem v'lo savdim. And then it's brought down im enu inyan l'kadarka, the normal way of serving the idol. So to an inyan l'shlo kadarka. Gavol misa loy mechayev. B'shloi kadarka ela hani de prati b'hukra. All the ones that are explicit in the pasuk, which we're going to see, which we saw in the Mishnah. We're going to explain why those, but everything else you're only around an asay. I will also say rather, and you're not chayv misa. Okay. Hanaydir b'shmoi. A person makes a nether in the name of an idol, of a mekayim. Person tries to make a shvua in the name of an idol. Over beloy saseh. That's also a loy saseh. Hapoyer atzmo bal poor. A person defecates himself in front of an idol, which seems to be repulsive, but that's taka the away of its avoda, zuhi avodasa. And a zarek evan lamarkolis, zuhi avodasa. If you throw rocks, which normally throwing rocks is disrespectful, if you throw rocks at the markolis, so then in that case, as is brought down in great detail, of course, in Mestatas Avodah Zarah, that that's considered to be the avodah. You're chayiv. Says Gemara. So my echad oived. What does that mean? Someone who worships. So Rabbi Yirmiyah hakikamer. Echad oived kedarka. If a person worships the idol in the normal way, as well as ve'echad mezbeach, ve'echad mekater, ve'echad menasa, ve'echad mishtachava, ve'afil shuchadarka. But these other things that even if it's not the normal way that this is the way to serve this idol, you're still going to be chayiv. Fine. So it says the normal way. It says Rashi, kol avoida af gifof v'nishuk af derech bezayin b'kedarka v'chay misa. So you can still be chay misa because you're doing whatever it is the way to serve this idol. So Gemara says lichshav nami zayrik. Why do we mention zrikas adam also? So Rabbi is zarik hainu menasach. It's the same thing as a libation, like pouring wine, pouring water, pouring blood. Dersiv bal asich nischehem midam. Do not engage in libations with the blood. So how do we know, as Rashi says, the mechaye bahani avodas afshlo kedarka? How do we know that these specific avodas, for example, a person who is mekater or menasich or mezavich, how do you know you're chay misa, the tanarbanan? Because after all, it's not the derech avoda. Even Nemar, the pasuk would have said, "Zavech yacharam, they'll be destroyed." Hayisa aimer bezavech kadashim b'chutz hakas medam. We'd be thinking about someone who is sacrificing kachim outside of the base of mikdash, which of course is not allowed. Hakas medaber. Talmud leimer Elohim bezavech. What does that mean? It's talking about idol worship. That's what it's referring to. Elohim b'zayvach. So ainli el b'zayvach. So we see the pasuk is specifically talking that you're never allowed to sacrifice to the idol, even if it's not the derech avoda. So we understand now. And how mekatim menasach, the other one, someone lemer built Hashem lavadai. Only Hashem. So reikan ha'avoda is kul l'shem hamiyuchid. That these avodos are only for Hashem, and therefore, if you would use it for something else, for an idol, you're chayiv. So since the zvicha went out to learn out of avodos pnim, how do we know bowing? So it says that you went and bowed down to idols. So we see clearly there's a punishment even if a person just bows. To Einish Shemanu, Hazhar Nayin, we know the punishment. How about the Azhara? Talmud lemer kil yishtachel le'el acher. Yochel shanimar b'haman megadef v'menashe v'menayel. So we said maybe you're chayiv there. No. Talmud lemer zayvich zvicha b'chol ha'isa. It's like doing an act like slaughtering. V'lo miyatzel hakish aleha v'loimocha mazvicha miyuchedes. She avoides pinim, that when it comes to the zvicha, that's something which can be done inside the base of mikdash. V'chayav aleha misa, sav kol she avoides pinim chayav aleha misa. Yatza hishtachava, that excludes the bowing down. Lidain ba'atzma, that we learn out by itself. That you're chayav. Yatza zvicha lidain al klal kula. Okay. Omer mar hayisa aimer b'zaveh chadashim b'chutz hakas medaber. We're talking about kachim b'chutz. Zayveh kadashim b'chutz karisu. In a second, that's a case of Yechayiv karis over there. So Sanhedrin b'chi asrubei katola. When do we warn about getting killed? Kilo asrubei karis kamashmon. When there's no karis, that kamashmon. Amalei Rava bar Rav Chanan Labaya. Why don't we say that Yotze Ishtachava, we should exclude bowing down? They're not chayiv. So why do we need zavech? That it has to do with being mechashim mi'avoida l'avoida. Okay, having a machshava about one avoida during another avoida. Ditmar. A person shacks an animal to spread your intention. During the shachita, you're thinking about another avoida. You're thinking about the zrikas dam. L'haktir chelba l'avodas kachavim. So Rabbi Yochanan Omer, since you had a machshava about a different avoda while you were shechting, so on Samach Amud Aleph, Asura, the animals asur b'hadna, says Rashi, even though your shechting was not for idol worship. If he will zark damla, but it's kachavim nesr, even if you don't end up sprinkling the blood, it's still asur. And the reason is because it's considered it's possible. It's in the behemoths asur b'hadna. Reish Lakish Aymer Muteris. Now, the fact that you had a different machshava doesn't affect the fact that you did the shechita, which your intention was fine for the shechita, just not for something else. So Anicha Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish Boykra, he needs to know this psak and this din by shchuti chutz. So Maskav Rapabu Rabbi Yochanan Lo Boykra. So he said, well, he doesn't need a pasuk. Ad kan lo kas Rabbi Yochanan. Only time Rabbi Yochanan said that having this machshava at b'shashchita, it makes the animal asur b'hana el behemoths, an animal avol gavra lo bar katalahu. Now, when it comes to a person, he's not a bar katala. V'asa kral l'chiyuvi gavra l'katala. And the pasuk's coming to mechayev a person to be killed. So Maskav Rav Acha Berei de Rav Yikol Reish Lakish Mi Boy Kra doesn't need a pasuk. Ad kan lo kash shar Reish Lakish el behema. He matters this animal. Avol Gavra Bar Katolhu. This person's to be killed. Midi Havi Yamishtach Vel Har Mutter Va'avoida B'Sayev. Okay, we're gonna stop there. Maybe there's another question. We saw question 10. We did not see question 11. Maybe question TA 10. V'mandir me'in b'chashmin mi'avoida l'avoida. L'fi deloy alfin l'chutz mifnim. Ma'du lo name the krod o zavech bol rabos t'chayev af mi'avoida l'avoida. So, a fil mandir me'in b'chashmin ze rak la'aser sebehema. That only asers the animal. Avo inyan chiyav misa, to be chay misa ha'oived pshita dechayev k'moi mishtach l'har dehar muter ve'avoid b'sayev. So when you bow down to a mountain, the mountain, you can't aser the mountain, but you're still chayev for bowing down to it. Okay, Chuitaka did see that. That's so again, one who is ein machashmin mi'avoida l'avoida, right? So that's what we said. Hashaykhet behema lizard dama v'eskachavim l'hatechel v'eskachavim. So this is the discussion. This is TA10. You have a machloikas Rabbi Yochanan who says that's asur b'hana, and Reish Lakish says is muteris b'hana. So he said that ad kan lo kas Rabbi Yochanan. Only time. So this is ein mechashim avoid l'avoida, which means that's Reish Lakish, that's mutter. So he says like this: Reish Lakish mi boy krad kan loika shar Reish Lakish el behema. Maybe he's only going to allow the animal. It's going to be mutter b'navel gaver bar katalahu. But this person is still a bar katalah. Midahavi mishtach lahar dahar mutter v'avoida b'sayev. Just like when a person bows down to a mountain, as we said, the mountain is not asur because the pasuk says Elohehim Eloharim, V'Aharim Elohehen, that there's an isser of bowing down to the idols on the mountains, but not that the mountains themselves become gods, and therefore you can't asur hana on an object. So let's see this one more time. The filman the army mechashin ze rak la'asur as a behema, avol inyan chiv misa. Okay, that's TA10. So let me just put this over here. Dahavi mishtach v'har dahar muter v'avoida b'sayev TB11. Oisim shahim mishtachin v'haman ha'im chayav v'mastadim b'zeh. Adkan.